Hello friends, in this video I am going to discuss methods, techniques and instruments of data collection, data collecting tools and sampling and such related concepts we will discuss in this video. So begin from the very beginning. That is about data. What is data? So data, it is defined as the quantitative or qualitative value of variable. For example, it may be in form of number, image, facts, figures, etc. So it is the smallest unit of information from which other measurements and analysis can be done. And data, it is the most significant aspect of a research study, because without data you cannot proceed to conclusions. You cannot be able to draw conclusions, because you uh, draw conclusions based on the data and the information that you get, right? And the sampling and things like that. We will discuss all of the related concepts. So you will employ different data collecting tools, right? What are the things that you have to keep in mind while while collecting data collection? So obviously the name indicates a process of gathering information or the data to answer your question, right, by researcher. So the task of data collecting begins once the research problem has been defined. As I already told you, defining your research problem, that is very important part of your research. Once you decide your research problem, then the objectives, then variables will be defined automatically, the variables. And under the light of your research problem, you will be collecting data, right? And you will also define the design of this study will be check out. And data collection allows the researcher to gather information about your related study, or the about the participants or the subjects of your study. So what are the things you have to decide? You have to decide which data to collect and how to collect data, and who will be the who will collect the data. Obviously the researcher himself, or in case if the researcher is not available or is not able to collect data, then obviously he will choose someone else, and then you have to collect data. So sources of data we will see. So external sources, internal sources, obviously yourself. And external sources, under external sources you will go for primary data and secondary data as well. We will discuss that in detail. So primary data refers to the data which is gathered for the first time, right? So this data is more authentic, valid, reliable, because it is collecting for the first time, and used for the first time. It is original and genuine. And secondary data is data gathered through some secondary sources, such as books, articles, journal, thesis, or any literature. So this data has already been used, gathered, utilized by someone else, right? So this can be less authentic or less valid as compared to primary data. So data collecting tools, we will be discussing primary data. This is the collected through first-hand experience for the first time by the researcher himself. And this data doesn't include any alteration, as it has been used by first time by the researcher. It is genuine, and it is valid, reliable, and so as compared to secondary data. So we will be seeing method of collecting primary data, different ways of collecting primary data. That is direct personal investigation, right? The investigation that you personally conduct, or you will conduct interviews of people uh, who have work or who have experience in related field. And then you go for indirect or oral investigation. Then you will choose, maybe you choose case studies, you conduct case studies and measurement labs results and experimentation, and investigation through observation. So these are the some of the methods of collecting primary data. So primary data, it has got its merits and demerits as well. The merits include it is target issues and address them directly, right? Data interpretation is better and high accuracy of data is there because it is genuine, and so it is accurate, authentic, addressing specific research issues, and greater control because it is used and collected by the researcher himself for the first time. And demerits include costly. Obviously, the researcher has to invest his energy and resources in while collecting data, so it is costly, time consuming, right? More personal resources that you have to invest in, personal energy, time and money. So inaccurate, maybe people demerit is that if while you are gathering data from people or participants and subjects, they may give inaccurate feedback, right? Or training is required, right? Training your participants or imparting skills to them, so it's a laborious, right? And secondary data, we will be discussing about secondary data. So it is already collected by others, right, in the form of books, articles, journals, or any other literature, so it is less authentic or reliable as it is being already used by others, and it is resorted to when primary data is inaccessible. Then you will go for secondary data, and it is available in published or unpublished form: reports, journals, books, articles, magazines, many sources like that, internet, right? Previous researches and theories. So the method of collecting secondary data uh, uh, include published works of government, corporations, international or institutional publications. And the merits and demerits of secondary data include: the merits include it is quick and cheap, and wider geographical area, longer orientation period, and leading to primary data. While demerits include not fulfilling specific research needs, right? Because mostly you cannot find it relative or related, right? Or according to your needs. So poor accuracy is there, and it is not up to date. It is outdated as it has been already collected a years before or some time before, and poor accessibility in some cases as well. So we will be comparing primary and secondary data. Primary data, it is real time, collected by researcher himself for the first time, and you are sure about the resources, and it can answer research question, and less costly. No, it is costly and time consuming it, as the researcher invest his energies and resources in it, right? Or you can avoid biasness or subjectivity, and it is more flexible. While secondary data, it is the past data already being collected by others, and you are not sure about the sources or refining the research problem, and it is cheap and no time is required because it is already presented there, prepared form. So it is biased. Bias can be there. Bias cannot be rolled out in secondary data, and it is less flexible. So the methods of primary data collection include interviews, surveys, questionnaires, case studies, and observations. And observation method, what you actually do in observation method, it is helpful in collecting the real-time data from the field with the help of your observation sheet, right, which researcher develop in the light of their variables or objectives, right? Then collection of data, it involves researcher on observation, as already been discussed in the research process, that observation is very important step, right? Researcher on observation, and then subjective bias is abolished if the observation has been made accurately. And then steps involved in making observation is you have to determine what is to be observed, and select subject or respondent or your participants while selecting or just compiling your sampling technique you apply. And then you conduct observation, recording sheets and images, and then compilation of data. And in interviews, you know about the interviews, as you have already been discussed about interview skills in your communication and presentation skills as well, right? It may be face to face interviews, and there are different types and subcategories of interviews as well. So two major kind of interviews include personal interviews, in which you have face to face interview with a person, and other is telephonic through a phone, right? And then further classification of interviews include structure interviews, in which a set of pre-decided questions are made. And in unstructured interviews, you don't have predetermined questions, right? And while in focus interviews, the attention is given to experience of respondent and its possible effects on study. So steps involved in interview, obviously four steps are involved. You have to prepare in interview schedule and select your respondent and analyze or interpretation of gathered data and conduct the interview. After that, questionnaires. You know about the questionnaires, and you will fill the questionnaire shared by the others while conducting their research, right? And it is a question paper, right, obviously containing many questions uh, in different formats, right? Obviously some are MCQ based, or while others have a set of options, right? Strongly agree, disagree, and 5 to 6 options are there, right? Neutral and things like that. So a questionnaire, it is personally handed over to respondent, and respondent will choose fill the questionnaire according to his experiences and his likes, dislikes, and things like that. So a questionnaire is classified into open-ended and close-ended. So there are open-ended as well as close-ended questions are involved in this. And in uh, in quantitative research there are open-ended questions, right? Because it is objective. No, in quantitative there are close-ended questions, because uh, it is objective, while in qualitative research there are open-ended questions, and it is inclined towards subjectivity, because personal opinions are involved in it. And further steps involved in questionnaires, right? You have to prepare questions, select the respondent, administer questionnaire, analyze or interpret data, and tabulate the collected data. And lastly, case studies. So the case study method is popular in qualitative studies, and it involves a careful observation of social units. This may be individual, family, community, and it provides in-depth and exhaustive analysis of the incidents, behaviors which are relevant to selected research in hand. So these are the methods, data collecting tools, or data collecting methods that you employ in collection of data. So this is about collection of data, and we will discuss data analysis as well. So after collecting this data, you will be analyzing that data, and come to able to draw a conclusion or about your research problem. So thank you for watching.